A big weekend ahead. It's the Easter weekend. Around 2,500 vehicles expected per hour on the N3 toll route alone. Motorists travelling to KwaZulu-Natal are advised to be extra cautious on the roads. On Monday, the 10th of April, return traffic is expected to peak at approximately 3,500 vehicles per hour. Let's talk to N3 Toll Concession Operations Manager Thania Dhoogra, and for a countrywide picture, we'll also talk to RTMC spokesperson Zwane. I believe Simon is joining us on the telephone line. So, Simon, good evening. In fact, good evening to the both of you. But we'll start with you, Simon, for just a topographical view of the major routes that typically get huge traffic flows. What are the routes motorists should be most cautious about?
Yes, the routes that get most traffic volumes at this time of the year would be Zwane, the N3 to Durban, the N2 Western Cape to the Eastern Cape, the N4 towards Mpumalanga. Now, we're urging motorists to be extremely cautious for some reasons that I don't understand. We are seeing a high number of people hiking along the side of the road. On the N3, we try to discourage them by sending officers there to tell them, but they keep coming back. I think it might have to do with the high cost of public transport this time of the year, but there are too many of them, and it's a high risk. So we want to really urge motorists driving this roads to be really on the lookout for those people. We are encouraged to see that a huge number of motorists have decided to leave earlier in the day. In fact, even yesterday, we spiked in traffic volumes, particularly on the N3 around Moy River. We suggest that there are people who have left early to avoid congestion, and that will help us to reduce the number of accidents on the road.
Yeah. Simon, just back to the people that are hiking, and as you say, it's an understandable plight to be in where you can't afford transport to get where you might need to go. What is the specific risk? Is it because a lot of people are stopping for them? Would it be typically trucks? What is the dangerous aspect of that behavior?
Yes, sometimes it's trucks stopping for them. Sometimes it's other vehicles stopping for them. And you know, the N3 now has got a high number of trucks that are traveling on the roads. And the shoulders of the road is not sufficient for people to be stopping anywhere, particularly in the spots where these people are stopping. And we know from history that around Vosloorus towards Heidelberg, there is a high number of pedestrian fatalities. That is why we're trying our best to remove these people, but they keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, that is, and as you say, you know, quite a dangerous thing, especially depending on time of day where visibility might be impaired. Thania, I want to bring you in now. The N3 is always a hotspot for congestion and for traffic as well. What are your expectations?
Well, hi, Man. Thank you for having us. We've been expecting that traffic is going to be significantly higher than the recorded statistics thus far today. But as Simon says, we did see quite a significant volume of traffic on the route yesterday. And we have seen fairly high volumes of peaking at just around 1,300 vehicles an hour heading southbound. We are still expecting that a number of people who would probably have left towards the afternoon would more than likely still be making their way down the route. So we're still expecting that we could see a bit of a peak today, but if we don't see that today, then it is very likely that tomorrow morning we will definitely see a peak in traffic as a lot of people make their way down to the KwaZulu-Natal coast. So that just lends itself to high congestion or possibility of congestion, and obviously increases the possibility of incidents along the route.
You know, every year, and we can almost imitate a conversation we've had every other peak season before. We were just commenting before the program that we typically speak around this time. Are there innovations that we can put in place, you know, either staggering the amount of, you know, in terms of the traffic time that people leave from the province, for example, to go on the N3 and head down towards the coast? What ideas, you know, are on the table to just try and stagger that traffic a little bit more and make it more manageable?
Well, I think information is key. So, that's one of the things that we try to do and why we share a lot of our statistics as early as we do and tell people about our expected peaks, traveling time, and why you can see it's not an exact science. Because as much as we do anticipate that road users are going to be traveling during our peak periods, often they are staggering their travel time. So I think that they are definitely taking cognizance of that information that we're sharing, which makes it extremely difficult for us to actually enforce anything around that. But particularly with regards to the traveling times of, public transportation vehicles who will be frequently traveling up and down the route, transporting their passengers, and also bearing in mind that we will still have all of our freight vehicles traveling on the route, and we need goods to be distributed around the country. So that places a lot of pressure on the system, and it just means that we need to increase the visibility of all of the stakeholders, but also that we need to increase the vigilance by our road users. There is unfortunately only so much that we can do from a road safety perspective. We can ensure that the road safety law enforcement officials are doing their roadblocks and checking on vehicle roadworthiness, etc. But the drivers and road users themselves also need to play their part, and they also need to help us because it's a shared responsibility.
Well, some important ground I must cover before I let the two of you go back to your duties. Simon, let's talk about roadworks that will potentially affect traffic flows beyond just the N3.
Beyond the N3 is the N1, where we're expecting maybe 2,800 cars an hour. Well, the N1 has been built today. That traffic has been stretching all the way into...
All right, our line with Simon is not the best, so let's let Simon go. Thania, let's come back to you and just talk about, if there are any roadworks, and we're also cognizant of the fact that there has been weather damage to certain tracts and stretches of road. What do motorists need to be aware of on the N3?
Well, fortunately, from an N3 toll concession perspective, there's no construction currently underway over the entirety of this weekend, unless, of course, any emergencies crop up. There are no plans for there to be any construction, so all lanes are open to traffic. And we've been very fortunate that despite the bad and inclement weather conditions, we have not been affected. So the N3 is fully open to traffic, and traffic is flowing smoothly. We have had some minor incidents on the route that have been reported, but nothing disrupting the flow of traffic. And we're really appealing to our motorists to help us keep it that way.
Talk to us about management and control of traffic on that route as well. Will there be, we expect typically, roadblocks and speed traps. And sometimes, we can incentivize drivers to drive better if they know that there's going to be quite a bit of enforcement along the route. What can you share with us on that score?
Well, in that case, there is law enforcement and roadblocks on the entirety of the N3, all 415 kilometers.
We both know why we're saying that. Talk to us also about emergency services and the level of personnel that's been laid on throughout the course of this long weekend.
So we're very, very fortunate to have close partnerships with all of the law enforcement officials and emergency services on the route. We have what we call a road incident management system that's really well established. And through the combined efforts of all of those stakeholders, there are increased law enforcement officials who've been deployed together with emergency services, tow truck operators, fire, emergency services, everybody, including our own route patrol services. They are patrolling the N3, making sure that they have higher visibility as much as they can do. But in addition, they are operating from more strategically located positions, more spread out and distributed along the route, so that if there is an emergency, they can also respond very, very quickly, because obviously we want to get our motorists moving and on their way as quickly as possible. So in any emergency, as soon as we get a call, we will deploy those resources and get everybody the help that they need as quickly as possible. But now, so in addition, there's definitely going to be increased roadblocks, etc., that are strategically being carried out along the entirety of the route, random locations, checking for vehicle roadworthiness, checking for the drivers themselves, making sure about warrants, speeding fines, etc., but also just generally making sure that road users are adhering to the rules of the road.
And conventional wisdom applies, which most motorists should know anyway. Just make sure that the vehicle has good integrity. You've done, some level of servicing before you embark on a long journey, and that you manage your fatigue and exhaustion. That seems to make the most sense. Are there any incidents that you're concerned about in terms of some early trends that are emerging?
Fortunately, nothing at this point in time. Just again, like to reiterate to road users that they should please just make sure that they're following official news channels like N3 Route on Twitter, where we'll keep them updated about anything that is happening. Thus far, we have had a few incidents, but nothing significant. And like I said, nothing impacting on the flow of traffic at all. We'd really like to keep it that way. The weather services did issue an advisory about a potential cold front that will be coming in later this weekend. And that might result in, thunderstorms and wet weather on sections of the route, both in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. And that will obviously impact on our road users making their way back home. So again, there we'll, advise people as that situation develops. But making sure that your vehicle is roadworthy and in good condition, your tires in particularly in that circumstance is even more important than it normally is, because smooth tires will impact on your braking ability. Following distances will be vital, and then also making sure about increased visibility with headlights being kept on.
Thank you very much for stepping aside from your duties to tell us what's going on the roads. We appreciate the updates. Operation N3 Toll Concession Operations Manager Thania Dhoogra. And earlier we were also talking to RTMC spokesperson Zwane.